Welcome back. Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studio. And in studio, already a very spirited, colorful, interesting pregame discussion. You hear the voice. He is a journalist, but also somebody with a pen that definitely gives some very interesting points of view. We met in passing early on with the reparations task force. So I was taking some pictures and he was like, I follow your stuff. And I was like, for real? I was like, how does this person know who I am? He was like, because I'm looking at Detroit is different. I'm like, oh, here we go. Here we go. So then he was doing a little things with some Axios, but the good brother has a Substack. Do y'all know what Substack is? Substack is where a lot of these journalists are right now. If you want information that's coming directly to you from a journalist and more expanded view without the curation, as they would say, and the cutting back of some people that, quote unquote, may not necessarily think you want that much information. But if you're wondering the arcs of a lot of this stuff and data, it's in stuff like that. But without further ado, Mr. Sam Robinson, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Kari, man. It's good to see you. Good to be in here for the first time.
Yes.
Shout out to you for this is a pretty impressive studio, honestly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We try to do what we can do when we can do what we can do.
Well, keep doing it, man.
As the good words
it's
of Franklin Hatchett.
Quality product that goes out to the people, and you really got some good guests on here.
Mm-hmm.
We see each other at the policy conference, and you'll get the people in the suits back there, really giving you some stuff that I think the news and the free press could use. He's getting some good scoops out here for Detroit is Different. So shout out to the independent media folks out there across Detroit, across the whole state of Michigan. People are really doing it right now. Obviously, as we know, legacy media is in sort of a crisis.
It definitely
powers
is.
that be don't know how to make money.
Yeah.
And other people are making money, so
yeah,
I figured why not join them.
And us in independent media, we definitely we finding out what's going on with the journey. I shouldn't say don't know how to make money, but the revenue streams it's more options. Let me put it like that. Because when I started this so long ago, many people were like, what is this? How is this happening? And what the journey is. And I love the journey as it builds and evolves. It's also obviously a pleasure and passion of mine too, because who would talk to people for 10 years, all types of people, and not have a passion for it? So within that,
crazy people, I don't know.
Yeah, I have
people
a little
getting paid to do so.
I have a propensity of possibly where I'm at on the sanity spectrum. Let's be progressive. Sanity spectrum is some of that because it takes a propensity of.
I live on the line and boundaries all the time. So yeah, but man, shout out to Substack. I'm doing my own thing now. I've worked at MLive, Axios, and the Detroit Free Press. I'm doing what's called Detroit 1 Million. It's about a generation of Michiganders growing up in a state without a city with 1 million people, and the competing forces working to bring 1 million people back to this city. Kari, there's probably 1 million Detroiters running around the world right now that could tell you what the city was like when there was 1 million people. You're one of them.
Hey, I already love the pitch line. You can tell this guy has some media training.
I do.
I
am the media.
I know. You are the media.
That's what Elon tries to tell us. Yeah, man, it's been interesting so far. Obviously, yeah, we're trying to make money still. Haven't figured that out. But you don't really need to make money.
We're gonna talk offline, like about some of the work in independent media. I think is some indirect opportunities that present themselves. Like you'll get emails from projects like, hey, I'm shooting a movie here and I would like some context on this, that, and that. And then you'd be like, 1 second, I'm going to be like a film advisor.
Right.
Like it's stuff like that will present itself. Sometimes I take those opportunities. Sometimes I don't. I love doing the camera stuff and community events, as people know. And that's more so my space. But you'll learn that it's not going to be probably what you think. A lot of indirect benefits and revenue streams start presenting themselves. As you do more of this, it'll start blowing you away.
Well, I'm hoping so because I have a passion for local news. I think we should all be willing to be customers of our local news products that are available in our communities, right? You know what I'm saying? I'm not telling people don't sign up for the news and free press. What I am telling you is, if you identify journalists that you enjoy reading, find them and try to support them, right? And it's hard if you're not on social media, which obviously is going crazy now, so people don't want to be on it as much. But this, and it's harder now. AI in your search results, you look up something and it's like telling you the AI summary of who Sam Robinson is. It's like they just wanted to find Detroit1million.com, man.
Hey, and shout out to OpenAI and what is it? DeepSeek?
DeepSeek is the China one now.
Yeah,
and,
man.
You know,
it's all of this stuff is here.
The company that I just left, I was laid off in August, Axios. They partnered with Sam Altman. He's the founder of OpenAI, and he's funding some of their new local news startups. Local news via Axios. They have 30 or so local products. It's losing $2 million a year. It doesn't make any money.
See, that's where like a lot of the independent media and what this is it helps to validate things and substantiate a lot of stuff. That's a big.
A lot of money is being wasted. Like legacy media and corporate media people are literally wasting money doing the wrong things.
You think that, but it's not as direct. It's a reason why Jeff Bezos purchases the Washington Post.
Right. It's an end game.
So
there's an end goal.
Yeah. So like
Axios is a tech company. People like to criticize them to say.
So as it becomes that, like I say, when you can spin the narrative, it's all about hearts and minds. And you all already see that this brother will be back. So with that, your story.
Yeah. Well,
how do you connect to the D? And I know a little bit.
How do I? Yeah, I just told you. I started my life in Baltimore, Maryland. My mom's from Midland, Bay City, Saginaw area.
All right, wait, time out. BMO, another chocolate city, with some of the same challenges of Detroit. Shout out Mayor Short and others out that way. What was Baltimore like, and where did you stay?
You watched The Wire?
Yeah.
That was the time I was there. Was my life like that? No, but I was living in an apartment. My mom was a nurse at Johns Hopkins Hospital. She worked there for 20 years. She moved back, so she didn't have to be a single mom living in an apartment on her own. Moved back to Midland. I grew up in Midland, Saginaw, Bay City. I went to Midland High School and Western Michigan University. Western Michigan was really my first, exposure outside of, as family members that live down here in Metro Detroit. You go down here for Pistons games, or that time it was Auburn Hills. It wasn't down here. You would come down here for Tigers games or Lions or Red Wings. At the time, Lions were very inexpensive and affordable for working families to go to. It was like the cheapest ticket in the whole city.
That's because
not anymore.
Up until like about 2 years ago, the Lions were not winning.
No, they were the worst team. And I remember that 2015 divisional. I think it was against the Cowboys. There was a flag that got picked up at the end of the game, and the Lions, the Calvin Johnson, they called it wasn't a catch against the Bears. I grew up eating bad food at the same restaurant too many times. You know what I'm saying? And you eat bad food once, you're gonna be like, okay, well maybe I'll try it again because it's home team. You have it the second time. You go to 3 times. I've probably gone to like that restaurant 10 times at Ford Field and got I left angry that I spent my money there. I got out of it. Colin Kaepernick being blackballed from the NFL. I didn't like that.
Yeah.
I got out of the NFL, and I have just finally sort of hopped back on the bandwagon.
I know you came back, and it's like, what are the Lions doing?
I was at a Bears game last year. I didn't end up going this year because it was so expensive, but I got invited to go, and it was like amazing. Like it was like, oh my God, this is surreal. There's so many people in this stadium. It's loud. This is like what we would always imagine. Like imagine if the Lions were good and Ford Field was packed.
And it's an energy because this is definitely that culture. What was Midland like? Just because for people that don't know, I've traveled a lot of this Midland. What was Midland like for you?
Midland is a company town. Dow Chemical, Dow Corning. It's now Dow DuPont. They partnered with the largest chemical company in the world, to become the chemical company in the world. Dow DuPont, and they just monopolized. Interesting. Antitrust laws. I don't know how that works, but DuPont and Dow are now one, and the high school, the library, the community center, they're all named after Dow, and everybody that is there because of the chemical company. My parents were not engineers. My mom's a nurse. She's been married for 15 years to somebody that also does not work at Dow. But that was my upbringing, was sort of watching, sons of Congress people, sons of like people that were like poisoning the water in Flint, sons of like, executive or the whatever, like very, wealthy people, and I was like, this working class kid. Midland has people think of it as this like very wealthy, but there's a working
Mm.
population there that sort of lives in the
It's a
in the
Little
underbelly.
Caesars.
It's a good old boys club with the
It's
good
a
old
Little
boys that-
Caesars pizza within the Midland footprint.
It is, and Midland. I always tell people, what I'm saying, I started my life in Baltimore, Maryland. The difference between, what did I just say? I said the difference between bullying and racism. You know what I'm saying? I went from being the only white kid to being the only black kid. There's a big difference there between bullying and racism. You know what I'm saying? And I'll be able to tell my kids, like, I left Midland because of racism.
Okay, what was the difference as you talk about that between the bullying and the racism?
Black kids telling you that, oh, you're white, your mom's white, like, is just not the same thing as, like, racist abuse. It's just not. And people ask me that question. I don't really care. They ask me all the time, like, oh, do you think Kamala Harris is black? Well, I'm like, well, do you? A lot of people don't think I'm black. You know what I'm saying? My mom is Polish.
Mm-hmm.
My biological dad is, fair skin. He's about your color.
Mm-hmm.
So that issue is never really like, because I understand that it's identity, it's family history. Like, I understand that these are sensitive identities that people hold. I try not to gatekeep somebody's identity, so whatever. But the difference between bullying and racism, man, like, you really saw how adults treated kids, and I was always like, is this normal? Like, this can't be right. I had sort of these feelings at a very, very young age in elementary and middle school, being treated differently because you're just black. Like,
so Martin Luther King Day come up and they're like, well, we know Sam will present, and you'd be like, oh.
It's interesting, man. You can go look it up right now, Midland Daily News. I'm the reason that Martin Luther King Day, along with Jonathan Haynes, along with Alex Jewell, Emily Fisher, along with Eric Krause, his basketball coach, retired now. Shout out to Eric Krause in Midland. Are the reason, it was like they had basketball practice on MLK Day. We had school that day, and every other surrounding
school
districts don't have it. And we're like, what the heck? And so in 2014-15, we lobbied the school district. This is like my only political action I've ever done, is not being a reporter, journalist, I like to say, on the sidelines, objective and neutral to issues. But the only political action I ever did, to this day, it's still a holiday that they observe. Like,
wow.
Midland schools, public schools, I don't know how many kids they have in that district, do not go to school on Martin Luther King Day. And when we were advocating for this, they tried to tell us, have an assembly, we can do a half day. And we were like, if you do not do this, we're going to go to MLive Saginaw, the Saginaw News, and we're going to tell them what you just told us. They asked us for the meeting to be sort of private. I don't think we gave them that courtesy. We showed up and said, these are our demands. Give us Martin Luther King Day off. It's embarrassing that we don't have it off. We're Midland Public Schools.
Yeah.
We're not Hicktown Public Schools. We're not Bullet Creek. We're not, some dinky Meridian. We're not. No, shout out to those townships and those village communities. Shout out to all those people there, especially the black people there that are an extreme minority. Because as we know, there are black people in Midland, Bay City, Saginaw, Flint, Jackson, Benton Harbor, Kalamazoo, Muskegon, Grand Rapids, Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti, all over Michigan, right? There are black people. And it's a different experience than growing up in Detroit.
I can only imagine. Like I say, a lot of the mitten is, or as I know it, is my time truck driving. So I think I've been to a lot of the crooks and crevices throughout the state. And I do remember Midland would get, as in driving, I drove for Dairy Fresh Food. So
you've been to those rest stops?
Well, not really, because I was driving local, so I get like a hotel. But in it, because I'm delivering cheeses and a lot of stuff, you can kind of tell the affluence. So Midland would get like some of those premium, it's some rolls of cheese that may cost $75 per roll of cheese and things like that. So I would know know the community
cheese
just based on
expensive.
If you're buying $75 cheese, you have some paper or cheese to throw at it, because you're not buying that to put in macaroni. Whereas I would know based on kind of just a bill. If I have Nestle Quick on my order, I know the type of community it is. If I have pork grinds and jug juices,
Right.
I can already tell you kind of what I'm dealing with.
Right.
So the arc of seeing how food was stocked really painted a lot of pictures of communities. And then, it would reflect even in, you walk out, you see the cars in these spaces and places and what would be particular and the families that would come in there and, finding those personal chefs because some of the grocery stores there that's what I found. Like the more affluent the grocery store, there would be personal chefs that worked in the deli counters and you would basically have what would be meal prep possibly for like, I don't know, $600 a week, meal prep for a whole family.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
That's really interesting. You say it gives a reflection of those communities. So many like inanimate objects and things and like, do that. And I love observing that. Like,
Yeah.
if I was not a journalist, I would like do academia and be like a sociology professor or something.
Yeah, and it's kind of in that space. So
Yeah.
with that, you mentioned university space, Western. Why you choose Western?
I choose Western to get out of Midland. Central Michigan University was 20 minutes down the road, M20. We were going to that casino like when we were 16 and 17. It was like an 18 and up casino.
Okay.
My friends were winning like thousands of dollars out of that casino, Soaring Eagle Casino, Mount Pleasant, Michigan, when we were sophomores in high school. And so we'd had our fun in Mount Pleasant. There's nothing else. You only have to be there for 2 years to realize there ain't nothing there. Shout out to the Chippewas. You know what I'm saying? We're supposed to hate each other because we're Broncos, but I do not.
Okay.
I shout out to the Chippewas because I was from Midland. So when I was in Midland,
I thought you was an Antonio Brown fan.
No. Shout out to AB. I will say shout out to AB. I wanted to be near Chicago, I think. I think that was kind of I had earlier visions of myself not
being in the Chi.
Yeah, instead of here. And the reason I came here was just the affinity to the state of Michigan and feeling like it gave me a lot. Western Michigan gave me a lot. The people that I met from Detroit were very like instrumental in who I am. I feel like I became who I am today thanks to Detroiters in Kalamazoo.
So, Kazoo, what was it feel like out that way?
It was interesting. It's like a little community that's so bubbled. In Midland, we used to talk about the Midland bubble. I would imagine other white communities have their own bubble. Ann Arbor has a bubble. Washtenaw County. Kalamazoo has a bubble. The city is very left. It was one of 2 counties to vote for Bernie Sanders in 16, and I honestly believe 20. I might be wrong on that. I got to go back and look. But I know in 16 because I was there covering the election in Kalamazoo in 2016, and it's very liberal, but the county is conservative. And it's 2 hours away from Chicago, so you had so many people that were from Illinois, that were from Indiana, Ohio, that were at Western. It was a fun time. A lot has changed. I was the editor of my school newspaper, the Western Herald.
Okay, what was that like?
I mean, it was during COVID that I was sort of forced into this like journalism advocate role because the university was threatening to take our pay away, and I had to petition them to say we are an essential service. This is owed to us. The students paid pretty much their own salary in what was called the student assessment fee that was divvied up between the student groups.
So you said you only did one organizing act. You did some labor movement. You did some civil rights movement already. This man is a young man.
I did do that. I don't really think about it like that because it's just like, no, you're not going to take our freaking money away because of some virus. What the heck? That was like crazy for me. They really wanted to take our money away, and I had a guy that was working for the university, but he somehow was the director of the student media group at Western Michigan, and he was really acting as a sort of sabotaging force. And to this day, I don't have a good relationship with him because I care about kids, man. I care about students. I give literally my life to this. I could be going to do something else right now. I could go be a shill or a schmuck. I could go live in D.C. I could go live in Arlington, Virginia. I could go to Chicago, Illinois, and go be a schmuck there.
So
I'd rather be a journalist.
As the time goes, what are the type of articles that are there? And you say you're leading the paper. What are, you're in a journalist yourself, but now you're interacting with younger journalists. What are the ideas that they're bringing forth? What are you all producing? What are the stories?
Oh man, we were big into culture and sports, and so there were a few sports scandals at Western Michigan University that I had some
Interesting.
really great reporting on from some reporters. Shout out to Aya Miller; she's at MLive right now.
Mm-hmm.
There was a track coach that said the N-word.
Mm.
It was a white guy, and he was repeating
I would assume so.
quote. He was repeating a quote from one of his players. He was like, "Y'all gotta stop saying this word."
So it was kind of like that Boondocks episode.
Yeah, it was like that. Yes. I mean, the players that I talked to recalled that episode actually. And then there was again, you talk about these issues.
Mm-hmm.
Salisbury University, who just 2 months before had gotten into their own sort of racial story issue. Some had some weird thing happen on campus. I don't remember exactly what it was, but there was a guest professor that was leading a choir group on campus made up of predominantly white students with a mix of black students. I think there was 5 or 6.
How many black students go to Salisbury University?
Well, I don't know. Salisbury University in New York, this guy was somehow in Kalamazoo, Michigan, guest professoring for these choir students in Kalamazoo.
Okay.
And you can imagine where I'm going here. It was a conservative black man that laughed and scoffed at any concern from the black students that raised it to me that when they performed this, it was uncomfortable. I mean, their families came to this thing, and it was like Negro spirituals. That was the whole show was a play full of, slave songs. And it was like white people singing them. And I would see the videos, and I'd be like, this is crazy. I had journalism professors at Western Michigan tell me that it wasn't a story.
So
this became on like BET, like it blew up. It became a national thing.
So it was kind of like that in other clips, that clip of the choir, the white choir that sings the Lion King song, where people are like, it's just cognitive dissonance.
It was weird. It was
what's
weird.
going on, but even worse because now they're singing like Song of the South and
Made in the Water, and it's mostly white kids. Imagine that there's 2 or 3 in each side of the black kids that felt uncomfortable. Every single black student participant that was in the choir ended up speaking out about it in the newspaper.
It's like pick a barrel of cotton from this guest. Yeah, it's like,
and I had a journalism professor try to tell me that wasn't even a story. I'm like, bruh, you're crazy. Mm-hmm. People in media are very uncomfortable with our issues being a main bar story and a main bar issue, like making that the front page. Is that really a front page story, Sam?
Well, wait, I do think historically, even going back to what some people say is one of the greatest films of all time, but let's go back to Citizen Kane era, and I know that's taking pop culture and putting it into real life. And if you don't know what Citizen Kane is, you look at any of these movie lists, and it's not that bad of a movie, but it's about a newspaper baron that takes over a newspaper with the concept, it's a business. Yeah. And you're thinking that anything that could rock the boat of the business, and I'm guessing at a university, it's like, man, we bring in this guest professor. More than likely, it's some like relationship built between each university needs to send a couple people this way and a couple people that way, connected to here's a buzzword now, some federal grant dollars to reach out and connect all these communities together. So it's like, okay, yeah, let's roll this out. So when you ruffle feathers on a little bit deeper, it goes into some funding that comes to the university. And it's hard to say that, especially to a student, with the fire of Mr. Robinson, because then it's like, well, we need to expose that. And it's like, no, we don't, because we need to keep the lights on. That's the thought process. And I think that this has always been a battle, even Watergate. And many of these stories that I think are like the largest stories, Seymour Hersh, if you look at a lot of his reporting over the years about what's happened with any war conflicts, in the beginning, it's like, we can't knock America because we're in America. Like a lot of these ideas of those journalists that have given those bombshell stories, I think they're always pushed back against in the first iteration. Then after a while, it's like, let's go on and the expose happens.
Right. It was interesting, and the university spokesperson actually gave me the number of the guest professor who ended up compromising himself in the comments. Quotes that he gave me came out as sort of, I will leave it as, he's a conservative black guy. We saw a lot of those come out of the woodworks this past year, but you could imagine the sort of things that he was saying that weren't reflective of the student body nor the university at the time had no federal threat against its DEI and its diversity.
He was ready to give his
he was 10 years ahead.
Of I have a dream before they did that.
Yeah, he was not amused by my reporting nor this idea that the 5 black students that he led through, it was like a week-long thing. It was like a 2-week-long thing that he was hoteling in Kalamazoo to help you. So imagine, you do this whole big long, and this is how it ends: the school newspaper blowing you up. So I'm sorry to that guest professor who I don't even remember what your name is.
I mean, in reality, I'm sure that as much as we look at a lot of this stuff in media, and I'm going to ask you this question. We're still in your life story with this. But see, this is how good this guy is. He's good. But at times in media, all of this stuff is very personally related to people, but often we're uplifting the premise of something that connects to society. So it's a vehicle to have a larger discussion. That's how I look at a lot of these stories.
Yeah.
That still doesn't supersede the fact that people take this stuff personally. Like, here's something that's off color. Like, so many people have asked me my opinion, especially from my hip hop background of Diddy and everything. And the first thing I always say is, this is really a time to examine America's relationship with drugs and sex and that relationship with entertainment. Because as much as we try not to act like it, nightlife in America has a strong relationship with alcohol. If we take alcohol away, and that's really what's beginning to happen in a lot of the movements nowadays as younger people are not drinking.
Sam drinks water. That's my Instagram.
You're not going to have the same need for bars and clubs and these concert venues, because for anybody that's done events before, a lot of the bottom line for even getting access to a lot of these venues is the fact of the profit margins you can make off of alcohol, which I know that's a deeper discussion and it's not as, I guess, attention getting as a discussion that, oh, he did this and he did that and he got all of the bottles of baby oil and stuff. But I believe that it's a deeper context of a discussion to really unpack between the relationship between drugs, sex, alcohol, and also the way we look at entertainment in America. That's the way I see it from more of a media lens. And it unpacks things a little bit deeper than to just stay on the surface and say, I think he did it. I think he did it. I think is more of a, that's more of a barbershop talk conversation, which is also that carries weight and that has value too. But I believe in forums like this, we want to spark critical thought. We want to dig deeper into the context of these systems that do exist, because another elephant that I often say in the room is, those same kind of relationships also went into one of the largest donors to all of these political parties that seem to end up committing suicide in the New York jail at one point in time too, and also this is very prevalent when we look at that relationship and people of affluence. So is this more with affluence or not? So pressing that for media and pressing people's thoughts. That's how I look at stuff. And I know you have more of a lens of sociology too with this, which kind of goes into, with stories like that, I will hope that the brother walks away after stepping back and reflecting oh, I hate him and I already had these songs and I don't care if it is just a choir of white folks. They about to sing Pick a Barrel of Cotton. He would say to himself, okay, let me reflect on, instead of going in what I think needs to be delivered, let me already have a context to what fits best. And even if this were just a group of black folks singing these spirituals, if you don't really know a deeper context other than this is what I know, this is what I can do, we should dive deeper. I will hope that that's what was triggered. But
I don't know. I can't speak for him anymore. I hope he's doing well. Kalamazoo was a special place in my life. There's a guy running for, he's not running for anything. he applied for a position with Detroit Police. His name is Vernon Coakley Jr. He wants to replace James White, the interim right now. Todd Bettison is just an interim.
Yeah.
Police chief. We're talking about Detroit Police Department. When I was in Kalamazoo, KDPS, Vernon Coakley was the deputy to a woman named Carrie Ann Thomas. And there was one day in August on 2020, the Proud Boys, yes, the Proud Boys, came to Kalamazoo, and what ended up happening was, of course, what happens when Proud Boys go out. They have fights in the streets, and the people that were arrested didn't happen to be Proud Boys. They happened to be Kalamazoo residents, 7 Kalamazoo residents, 2 legal observers, and a reporter, including myself. I was arrested. I was briefly jailed, bonded out, and free to go. I was arrested on charges of is impeding traffic was the charge that was later dropped that same day by the Kalamazoo County prosecutor. I was offered a public and private apology. The public apology came from Carrie Ann Thomas, who to this day I have still never spoken to about my arrest. She ended up serving briefly for the Grand Rapids Police Department. After that happened, she resigned, and then it later found out through MLive Kalamazoo Gazette FOIA that she was fired. But Vernon, Vernon's an interesting guy. He wants to be the next Detroit police chief. Vernon Coakley called me after I was arrested to say, I'm sorry, Sam, I'm sorry. And I said, Vernon, is this officer going to face any reprimand? No. Can I know the name of this officer? No. And I had continued my relationship with Vernon Coakley. I watched him lead a social justice march. You remember 2020, like different groups were having competing events and marches. We're marching for this, we're marching for this, we're marching for this, all under the same guise of Black Lives Matter. The police had their own march, and Vernon led that. They had a police Black Lives Matter march in Kalamazoo. And in this march, led by police, right, an angry, conservative, white person driving a car down, I think what is that, West Main, I think? I'm visualizing the city of Kalamazoo again. Vernon Coakley, at that point, the interim chief, because Carrie Ann Thomas had been fired, I'm trying to kick into the camera. You're not going to be able to see my leg because I'm not a gymnast yet. He kicked the car, and I was like, oh my God, Vernon, what the heck? The car was trying to plow through so at the time, it was kind of like a protection of the marchers.
It was very, very tiki torchish.
Under the comments and replies of that tweet, though, where people were like, why is the police chief kicking a car? Vernon has had allegations of sexual harassment against him is the reason why he's no longer with Kalamazoo. So, think carefully when you guys are choosing who you're going to pick as your next police chief, Detroit Police. I could tell you all about Vernon Coakley.
So it's, as we can see, definitely staying grounded, and there's so much to unpack in that. And I would stay there, but I'm more interested in more of this story. So Kazoo, where do you go after Kazoo?
I was in Ann Arbor, man. I lived in Ann Arbor for less than 1 year.
Okay, so you head east.
I do, and that was my first time ever living in Southeast Michigan. I never lived as close to Detroit before. I've been to Detroit plenty when I was a kid, just having family nearby and in the city for events and whatever you go to the city for when you're in Saginaw Midland.
What was Ann Arbor like for you?
The pandemic, man. It was like, imagine everyone's wearing a mask and you like recognize people because you see them every day, but you don't really know who they are or what they look like because everyone's wearing a mask all the time, 24/7, outdoors and indoors. Some people are still wearing the mask. When you go to the Transit Riders United State of Transit Caucus meeting yesterday, this was Tuesday of this week, a lot of people are still wearing those masks. I wore the mask. I kind of liked it as a fashion accessory, honestly. But the pandemic and the way that Ann Arborites handled it was not conducive to like meeting people. I was very kind of lonely and alone.
Mm.
I was in Ann Arbor for M Live. They didn't want me to stay in Kalamazoo because I was only in Kalamazoo as an intern.
Mhm.
I had a lot of gravitas with the Kalamazoo residents at that point. That was kind of a bad business move by M Live to remove me from Kalamazoo just because I had been there for 5 years at that point. I knew the community. The community knew me. I didn't really want to leave. I didn't really want to live in Ann Arbor. But when I got to Ann Arbor, there was I wouldn't call him crazy. I mean, he's a little crazy. But his name's Jeff Hayner. And shout out to everyone in A2, hashtag A2 Council. Really shout out to you guys.
Mhm.
He called my colleague, Ryan Stanton, who is a longtime Ann Arbor reporter, city reporter, respected, the homophobic F word slur on Facebook,
Wow.
and he was censured. And Ryan just took the week off the next week, and so I had to fill in for Ryan's reporting. I had to call Jeff Hayner and say, "Why did you say the F homophobic slur word on Facebook as a Democrat city councilman in Ann Arbor, dude?" I was like, "You wouldn't have said this if it was the N word, would you?" And he was like, "Well, John Lennon does have a song called End of the World." And he said it a bunch of times, and I was like, "Jeff, you've now said that twice on the phone call with me. Like, I'm going to have to report this.
Yeah.
If you report this, I'm going to..." And later on, Jeff Hayner apologized. I didn't need an apology. I don't even think he knew I was black on the phone. And you see all the Ann Arbor Dems like, "I'm so sorry this happened to you, Sam. It's okay." Like, it's not the first time. I grew up in
also,
Midland.
But also at that moment, that definitely was the I apologize for the racism, and we're even doing a program called a George Floyd moment, connected to that with some of the young folks on our Detroit is Different team. It's a 3-part series, so check that.
I love some of those young folks on there, man. I see them around. I'm like, oh, y'all are really like out here and about here for real.
We
Maybe
doing
outside.
The Detroit is Different things.
No, the people that put on the show are really outside, y'all. Like, you will see them at venues and at, where people above 18 can go.
Yes, out and about. So with that, Ann Arbor, how you get to the D?
Yeah, how did I get here? I got bored of Ann Arbor. I just saw that there was apartments available for less than what I was paying in Ann Arbor. I was paying $1,000 a month to live on, Kingsley and 4th, right there in Carytown, right across from what's called Miss Kim's. And it's a very affluent neighborhood. If you go in there, it's like, oh, wow, how'd you afford to live here? It's blocks away. In Ann Arbor, downtown Ann Arbor is all walkable. You don't really need your car. And so it was great living down there. And the woman that I was paying rent to, her name's Karen Lacey. Shout out to her. She lives in Atlanta, Georgia. She's a black woman sociology professor, actually, at the University of Michigan. And she just gave people a good deal on rent. I was paying $1,000. I moved to Detroit, and I knock $100 off. The only reason I was able to move to Detroit was because I stopped covering the Ann Arbor community. I started covering the state legislature. I would drive an hour from Ann Arbor at first to Lansing. And I did the math. I looked at the time. I said, it's only a 20-minute added drive. It's only an hour and 25 minutes from downtown Detroit to Lansing. So I lived in Cass Corridor. I moved from downtown Ann Arbor to downtown Detroit. I lived on Charlotte and Woodward. And Joel Landy is the person that redeveloped that little neighborhood over there. He was a longtime mechanic, passed away during the pandemic. And his properties were just sort of the last of what they would call naturally occurring market rate, where he would intentionally, because he just didn't care to be a rich person, not make these apartments $1,500 a month. And that is long gone. The people that have purchased the property from Joel are rich people that want to become richer. It's very sad. And I've had so many conversations with those folks. That's a story for a different day, so I won't name them now. But shout out to everybody that was living in Cass Corridor from all this. I mean, people that lived there in the Addison Hotel apartments above Full Lucky. Shout out to Kong at Full Lucky. He got his parking lot taken away from him. The Addison residents there got their parking lot taken away from them for a commercial parking lot for Tigers and Red Wings and Lions fans and Pistons fans. Pistons fans know how to
District-
park on the street. They
District
somehow
Detroit.
figure it out. District
District
Detroit, yeah, right there.
There you go.
I lived in the District Detroit on the border, really.
Mhm.
But when they would have the community benefits ordinance meetings, we would get letters to our apartment saying, "Hey, you are in the district." And what I saw living in the district for 4 years was no movement on any sort of entertainment or business district, or surrounding Little Caesars Arena. And they're trying to do that again nearby and surrounding what they're calling the Center of Innovation, the University of Michigan, and Stephen Ross. He's the Miami Dolphins owner.
So you didn't like the shipping yard and a lot of that stuff. You weren't really
Shipping company. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
Shout out to them. I'm thinking of if I should say this woman's name here. I won't, but I will. Cindy Dara. She lives right over there. Near shipping company on Peterborough. Shout out to Craig's Coffee. Shout out to Mike Essien. Like, there are good developers out there. Shout out to Mike Essien. He's redeveloping Chung's. You've seen on cast when you drive by that Chung's building that sat there for 20 years. That's gonna have 3 new Asian restaurants in it. We don't know when.
Okay.
But I really got to know my community there, the Peterborough Arms residents, and certainly some of the folks across Woodward on the other side on Brush Park as well.
So, and you're doing this while you're traveling up to Lansing too.
Yes, I was working for MLive at this time, and I think Malachi was at Bridge a little earlier than I had left MLive. He left MLive a little bit earlier than I did, but it might have been like 1 or 2 months before, maybe 3 months that he was at Bridge. So we were both at MLive. He was living in Detroit, sort of traveling around the state, sort of based in Detroit. But getting to Lansing isn't hard. Getting back here kind of sucks at night when it's like winter.
What's the definitely a deer may pop out on you.
Yeah.
It's a lot, that 96 corridor.
Oh, yeah.
So with that, just what was the feel like for you in that state house? As a lot of what happens in the state house is
it's insular. I mean, it's in a bubble in itself. I mean, Lansing is interesting because if I was a resident there, I would be kind of annoyed that all the news is about the Capitol and what's happening in state government. Obviously, state government dominates Lansing. A lot of the people that I knew that lived there, there's a real opportunity. Like, if y'all got a little bit of money and don't mind not living in Detroit and want to live in Lansing, like, there's so many houses that you can buy.
Yeah,
for real. Like,
the cost of living,
cost of living is cheap.
Yeah.
The food is cheaper. Like, the bars are cheaper. There's not gonna be bars open past literally 5 p.m. Like, they literally close at 5 on the main street there. So Lansing is a different beast, man. It's not for everybody. It's for people that are really into policy. It's for people that are Michigan State University students. It's for people that are working for the state government.
And it's a lot of agriculture around there.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, it's definitely rural. You got to pass through Livingston County, Howell, to get up there from here. But I really appreciated the Lansing community. The people that I got to know that are from there. I actually live right now with a Michigan Public Radio reporter. His name's Colin Jackson. He moved down here to Detroit after I left Cass Corridor. I live in Art Center now, behind the DIA. And Colin moved in with me, took a risk, was like, I've lived in Lansing. He went to Okemos High School my whole life. I'm ready for something new. And there's going to be a lot of Black professionals in that same, I've been in Muskegon my whole life. I've been in Grand Rapids my whole life. I've been in Kalamazoo my whole life. I've been in Flint, Jackson, Ypsilanti, and they want to come down here because there's economic opportunity down here.
And you hear so much about here. And I do still feel like, part of the reason I started Detroit is different too, is this is still a very cliquish town to me.
Yeah, it is.
People track people by, it's like, what high school you go to? And things like that. And then it's like
very clicky. Like, when I go out, it's just like, hey, the social dynamics of Detroit is so high school here. It's so like, I don't know who you are. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Okay, I don't know who you are, buddy.
It's like, it's like, oh, where did they go? Persian? What year?
Right.
Hold on. Let me call the other person I know that went to Persian. That's a 95. Hey, you know them?
That's funny, man. It doesn't take people a long time to realize that I'm not from here.
Yeah. Really almost like immediately, because one of the first things is, where you grow, east side, west side. Then after east side, west side, where did you go? to high school. Then when people say what school you go to, they mean high school usually.
Yeah.
Now you can play goofy games and say like, I went to Spain Elementary, and it's like, you know,
They do that. I'm talking about. I went to Bates, but I went
Mhm.
to Lather Village though.
Yeah, and then it's like, yeah, we know when you do that, we know you did not go to a DPS school. And it's like, well, you know, my parents had a little bit of money, so I went to UD, and it's like, yeah, I believe it, you know. So unpacking that now, Detroit itself, you're back and forth in the corridor, you're connected in culture, you're at these community meetings. What's your take just really on like how people are taking to what you're writing here in the Detroit Flair as you're meeting people?
People feel unheard and unseen, and if you put them in the story, they're gonna be like, "Dang, like, thank you. This is good." People know that I'm trying to do journalism from a perspective of one that is literally shut out and shut down. Yet news leaders are like perverse, and so they think they're doing what they're actually preventing from happening. And it's like this crazy gaslight situation that every single young reporter that works at a corporate, like 100%, is like, I want to do this kind of story, but I know my editor, because we don't share perspective on issues or cultural understanding, it never happens.
So can you
People
unpack a
appreciate
little
that I
bit of
try.
that? Can
Yeah.
you unpack like, so what do you think the perspective and point of view of a lot of the editorial staff at some of the legacy media outlets would be? Like, give an example and
Right.
contextualize it.
And I've been working in legacy media for 5 years, y'all. So like, I love all the people that I come from and have learned from. People like Craig Mager and Chad Livingood and Beth LeBlanc at the Detroit News. People like Emily Lawler at the Free Press. They're doing the Lansing News. I don't say this as like a criticism of these individuals, but because City News doesn't sell, like Crane's Business Detroit laid off their Better Than Me and Malachi city reporter. Ariel Crass was like a high value talent, and they laid her off because, oh, well, we're not getting as many clicks. That's bad, y'all. That's bad. Like, news leaders have calibrated Michigan as Detroit as the cultural center because of politics. We need, like, I'm trying to actively change that, because that's not, nobody's moving to Lansing. Like, nobody cares about Lansing outside of the state government. If the capital is there, that's great. But there's people in Detroit, man. There's people that need help. There's people that have stories. There's like real interesting things that are going on here. Why do people moving here? As the Mayor Duggan wants to point out and celebrate for 2,000 people. Who are those 2,000 people? There are a lot of people like me, man, that are bored in our ho-dum communities, our rinky dink, our sad little towns. There's a lot of them out there in Michigan, man, that have no economic opportunities or resources for you to upward mobilize yourself. And that's what I'm really interested in. And how do we upward mobilize people like me from Midland or Saginaw or Muskegon or Jackson or Kalamazoo? Because right now there's absolutely no resources. There's limited resources in Detroit as it is. So like, imagine all the people elsewhere. They got to move here and then realize they're competing with lifelong Detroiters that have been doing this. You know what I'm saying? That are here. You're not going to compete with them. You better go.
So I like the framing of it,
Mm-hmm.
that they're thinking state, but also
clicks, and it's a business. And unfortunately, because we've been so bad at business, it's like a make up for it. Like we got to get the clicks. We got to get the clicks.
and as you talk about the clicks, the way that I always frame this, and I brought this up before, is there's two ways to see this. You can do this for something that's rich. You can do this for something that's reach. And that's the beauty to me of what Detroit is different is. So the collection of what this is has a richness. And I know another person may look at it like, yeah, that's what you're going to say. And hell yeah, that's what I'm going to say. Yeah. So the reach would be morning radio at one point in time. Yeah. You know, I mean, it definitely takes a skill set to be skilled at it. But we're driving under the premise of keeping your attention for the next commercial. And then that commercial itself is reaching millions of people. I rarely endorse anything explicitly here on Detroit is Different, but I've gathered a richness in that relationship with the people that listen, where now they're like, okay, I'm not even going to use the subject matter expert term because I think that's overused, but it's a relationship with the listeners where I'm not necessarily saying that I can immediately emote a sale, but I definitely could give a perspective. Hence, you listen to Detroit is Different. People trust my voice with that relationship where if I were to step out and say, what would be something that I think is in the zone of this? I would say this come into Detroit is something that you need to connect to because I believe this will be a cultural gateway that will open up more creativity for many people to tap into. So I personally am going to invest $500 in Project X. If I say that, that's going to gather a lot of different ears from uplifting that just from the relationship I've gathered with my audience, which is a richer audience. Now, with that, you can't exploit it because if you exploit it, you're going to be like, Shaquille O'Neal advertises everything. You know what I mean? Now, I think that takes a longer time. It's going to take a longer commitment. It's got to be larger than a person's fleeting thought process. And as I build the blocks of what I'm doing with Detroit is Different, that's one of the keys I keep in mind. And that's also, as you talk about what independent media can do, I can venture in a space that the average outlet that's more legacy that has higher overhead will not, because they're looking to still quantify on metrics where the value itself, back to the Washington Post, has lost more money since Jeff Bezos has purchased it, but it still can validate certain things, especially when you look at what the revenue streams are. It's not what it used to be. And I also argue, as a person with a marketing degree hat on, even the way that people would look at things before, like a full page ad and this will be this, or a Super Bowl commercial, it's like you can't. It's more correlation than causation, and marketing and advertising always is that. I often uplift, excuse my French, a lot of this that is my passion and what pays me. A lot of it's bullshit. If you talk to me, even if it's a great idea and strategy, we could sit down and we could unpack what I think would be the greatest way, and it still could possibly not necessarily move on people because for whatever reason, and not even necessarily because something catastrophic. We're dealing with people. All of this stuff is like social concepts. The thought process is, can we put the best effort in? Can this be something cool and creative? And then it can grow from there. If you pour more creativity in, you're going to gather an audience. And with that audience and that creativity, one of the classic Detroit examples I always speak of is Dally in the Alley. And that's been around for so long. And I remember just from performing at it or just going before I performed at it. Now it's completely different, but the roots are still the same. It's, to me, it's a bunch of hippies in Cass Corridor that like weird art. So that culture is the root of that community. So the more you trade off it being that, I believe you're trading off of what the crux of it is, and you're losing some of the richness. If I can't go there and find a chain made of silver forks, but I can go there and walk and and Gucci has a booth there, I would say to myself that this ain't really the feeling I was looking for from Dally in the Alley. So the richness takes time. And you have to have a different type of investment.
And it takes focus also, right?
Well, all of the above. Yeah. And at one point in time, all of the main outlets were their iteration of independent media at first.
And that's what I was going to say, like, it takes focus to get to this point because, bro, if the news and free press were going to do like a podcast, which they should have already done years ago, you would already have a better setup than what they're going to have. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and with it, and that's where I think a lot of people are very fearful of stepping into this space because the longer you wait, the barriers of entry get higher because you're standard. And I do think that starting, You got to have a starting space. And I leave up the archives of Detroit is Different. If you go back, the archives look like, what the hell is going on? And listening,
Good
it's
on you.
going on a journey.
Transparency, man.
People have to see the journey, that it's a starting point. And if you see the starting point in the other iterations, and I'm learning more, and people are seeing more of the clips, and I recognize I love long form content, but a lot of people's presence of mind is not there. They want it in 60 seconds. So I'll deliver in 60 seconds as well. And hopefully that will still ground a person to come back. But back to like that independent media, as I said, like movies, it's been people that use the work in dissertations. It's been people that take and cite Detroit is Different for like qualifying now, like expert witness testimonies and stuff. Like it's a lot of things.
Stuff.
People, you'll see and
references.
I'm just now seeing that myself. It's like it blew me away when somebody showed me that. It's like, damn, they're referencing this from a Detroit is Different. And all of this starts coming as you look at like how to quantify what that value is. The goal, I believe, is to get it out. But if you have those high barriers of entry, like it's not going to look good enough, or we're not going to make the base of a lot of money. And let's say you are that person that puts $10,000 into an episode. Now you've made the barriers of entry even higher. You just got to jump in this space and know that it's gonna build, as like the No BS Hour with Charlie LaDuff.
All you gotta do is have a phone, y'all. You just put your phone. Phone camera is good. If you got iPhone 13 and above, you're fine.
I think it's great. For me, because I had a production company, I'm not that, but it's all how you trade off. I think the higher the production, personally,
the more engagement.
Well, I wouldn't even say that. I would say the higher playback value. Hence, Cat Williams and Shannon Sharp. If that was, and Shannon Sharp's production quality is excellent. If his production quality was not as good, many people would have began watching it and never went back. But because the quality's so good, you're probably going to get the repeat viewer and that person that starts watching to finish watching. And this is me speaking from doing this shit for 10 years. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I found when I look at the metrics. The higher the production, the more the replay value. But still, the still of the story, if you can get what it is, people will look at yesterday, like the whole X verse was going with the Dalton County fist fight that's happening.
I saw that, yeah.
I
didn't really click into the thing. I don't even know what happened other than seeing the
fist fight. Now, but that's a classic example of the video's horrible. Now, if you would have had a cinematographer with a director of photography that already has staged that a fist fight is going to happen and it looks great, then you'd probably have a lot more watches even 3 weeks from now of that same video.
It'd be viral. I mean, I remember You Need to Leave. You remember that viral? It was a Saline, Michigan. Nicole Hester, an MLive reporter, captured that. And because it was on her nice, expensive camera, everyone saw the wide angle of the man, being like disturbed that this person would, tell him to go back to Mexico.
Yeah.
But that You Need to Leave, it goes viral all the time on Twitter. And I always just think about Nicole Hester. I'm like, without Nicole Hester, there is no You Need to Leave.
The higher the production value, it has a higher replay value.
Right.
It doesn't mean that bad production doesn't, but I've found that because it's like for people in music, good music mastering doesn't matter until the replay value comes out. So a song that, let's say, if the song is a 7 listen but has a 10 master versus a song is a 10 but has a 6 master, you're probably going to listen to that song with the higher master and replay value. Yeah. Hence and I haven't even really listened to the whole song, but just in brief glimpse, back to the media machine, the Sexy Red Bruno Mars song, I'm sure for multiple reasons is going to sound better than any other Sexy Red record. And also is probably going to be the largest song she'll ever have in her career.
Probably, but Get It Sexy in the little Soulja Boy-esque aesthetic with the gritty and grainy picture like that, it sells something. It sells authenticity, right? Like in our Gen Z culture is so getting back into the not perfect, the blurry image. Like, yeah, it's interesting.
It's an aesthetic. Like even like they have now filters that will shake a camera as if you're holding it with the hand.
Yeah, I mean the TikTok videos
Yeah.
when you do dances and it's like, like
Yeah.
the people will be like with the camera. Sexy Red, that's like the bass boosted part of it too, like it's like Rio de Young OG.
I'm saying this, like I say, it's a hit now, but it's going to be the cleanest hits when you're on the old school tour 20 years from now that are going to get played. Hence, Flow Rider is still performing off of songs.
That song. You're trying to get low.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's going to be your cleanest sounding songs that usually, that.
What do you think about Sexy Red?
Oh, man.
Right.
I did not expect that cultural
let's
question.
Let's hear it. Bryce Huffman and me go back and forth on Sexy Red all the time. I'm pro Sexy Red. I don't mean to compromise you, Bryce, but he's anti Sexy Red. So I'm pro, he's anti. Go ahead.
I am... Boy, talk about a political answer. As a hip hop.
She's the best. She's the biggest, man.
I would say that
she is the biggest female woman artist, rapper. She's the biggest woman rapper. And I think she's the most influential woman rapper right now. I think she's the most influential rapper right now because all the women want to be like Sexy Red.
I believe a couple of things with Sexy Red. Now,
not all the women.
I think that there is... So, I don't like that whole concept of when people say industry plant, because I don't think that. I think that what's been created and what's been propagated, like a lot of times in most hip-hop, are two totally different realities. So, I am pro-creativity. So, let's say that. I'm always pro-creativity. I am anti the fact that I believe that a lot of the premise of what she presents is like being exploited because this is the presentation that she's being offered. I believe if she were to come out with a song about, let's save Gaza, that would not get any support. If she were to come out with a song saying, let's take our money and put it in black banks, I don't think that would get support. No? I don't think so. I think that it's a lens in which a lot of even this discussion, back to social discussions, what we would call like, the brand of hip hop of a lot of women right now is from a lens that it's presented as women empowerment, though it's women presenting themselves in a lot of ways where men could exploit them because the best thing that they're offering is sex and sexuality. So
I think white people can exploit it too. I think do you think Sexy Red is like kind of minstrelly? And they're like, yeah. And I push back on saying, well, I don't see white people really getting up to her songs like that, like they do male artists. When I watch the biggest male artist in Michigan right now, Rio de Young OG, he's got 10 million views on his songs that come out in like 7 days ago. Like, why is so many people listening to Rio de Young OG? Why? Because not because, but he is in these songs talking about domestic violence, drug addiction, prostitution, from a these are all like first person perspectives that these rappers are talking about. So when I hear people criticize Sexy Red, I'm just like, what?
And I think that that's also one of those interesting dynamics for hip hop itself, like it being connected to it, putting together tours and shows. Most of the iterations of my 20s, that's what I'm doing. So, and it gets tough because it still is a person's real life. Like some of the interviews that, it slips my mind. And then also the ages of a lot of the people, they're at a point where exploitation comes forth. So it's back to like, if as a black person, I'm eating fried chicken and watermelon and buck dancing, but it's like what I'm used to doing and what I want to do, but I'm given a platform for it. It's like part of this is reality, but like I always feel a lot of this hip hop needs a disclaimer before from a psychologist, a sociologist to like contextualize what's going on with this. So like, as we see, I'm a kid and I'm listening to Snoop Dogg saying things like, you know what I'm saying? I don't love these hoes. I'm out the dough. It's a lot that goes into why. So like if a sociologist could say, I live in a type of community that's so stressed by the poverty that surrounds me. And
There got sociology rappers that comment. He said it's hard to. What did he say? It's hard to write songs about right when it's hard to see right. We write songs about wrong because it's hard to see right.
And I understand the line, but it still needs more context for a lot of this stuff to unpack. Because with Rio, the young OG, what I also see is him getting out of jail.
Yeah.
The process of him getting out of jail and quote unquote getting back to the bag, getting back into the studio and what that is. And then you even see like Big Meech in the concert that's coming up that's coming up connected to his release and what's happening. And the way that a lot of what I call street culture and growing up in a neighborhood where street culture surrounds me, it often hip hop is, I don't even want to say glamorizing, but it's romanticizing elements of street culture, but not portraying the realities that I've seen most of my life. You know, I live in a neighborhood where it's been people that have, you know, struggled with addiction most of my life, people that have also and sacrifice in sustaining what they would perceive as livelihoods and what selling drugs have meant in stripped apart families. You know, you can look to like one of the most watched videos of All Detroit is Different, the mini doc about Bodie James's album Major on McNichols, and you know, the way Bodie tells this. So where it goes is also a person's perspective of the art, but I do believe that it needs a lot more context, especially when the ages of a lot of these people are at a point where they're not even able to get the gravitas. And at the root of it, the corporations that profit from a lot of this are so far removed. Even as we look at, you know, the groundswell of the money that is made through a lot of this stuff and presenting things that incept ideas that can conflict who the audience is for. Because the root of a lot of this audience when it comes to rap, I mean, we're really talking about this stuff is for people that are aged 9 to about 14 years old. So when you think about 9 to 14-year-olds listening to Rio the Young OG, Sexy Red, let's even go Kendrick Lamar, you know what I'm saying? The biggest hit song of this summer is like openly like we're going to be watching a Super Bowl performance probably 3 times where we're going to be talking about pedophilia in the guise of a diss song. But it's like, how do you contextualize the art of a diss song and where art and culture stand in the mix of this? It's hard to sometimes unpack, but
one
it
of the
needs
people
more context.
that I get frustrated when I listen to all the time, and I just messaged him this week and he hit me back like, yo, I appreciate you. Shout out to Lonnie Bands, Bang Gang Lonnie. He has been through trauma in his personal and professional life. He's lost friends and been shot in the head and has survived. And after he survived, you know, his music became just like therapeutic. You could very much tell he was talking about struggles with his family, his children, his mom, his life. Like he was really talking about, I'm depressed. I feel like I need therapy. I tell my family that I want to kill myself and they laugh at me. He's putting this on the track. I never heard anything like this. On the same tracks, he's talking about how he feels bad that he hit the girl that he's pimping in front of his mom. You know, like, and it's sometimes frustrating to listen to. Sometimes it's very uncomfortable to listen to. But I really have appreciated that he does that in the most transparent way that I've ever heard anybody that is doing like the street themes in music. I've never heard anybody do it like Bang Gang Lonnie Bands has done it. So shout out to him.
Yeah, I think it, like I say, some of this and what we perceive in a lot of forms of what we take in and how to take it in, it becomes tough. So that's the thing about Sexy Red. I think it's an audience for it. I personally am not the biggest fan personally just because, you know, the music, but it's songs and I think it's a place and space for it. Yeah. And that was what I really appreciated more so in when I started falling in love with hip hop in that era, where I felt there were places and spaces for different variations that were very propagated. So I knew, you know, it's like you could watch Yo MTV Raps in 1991 and you see 2 Live Crew and Public Enemy and Brand Nubian and Tribe Called Quest and MC Light and Salt and Pepper and Queen Latifah and Moni Love. So like I'm looking at variations of how things can be presented versus like this is what things exist.
We still got it. Like No Name.
It's not as I would say like because the way things are.
It's not pushed to the mainstream.
That's what
I feel like now we get less. We only get one black figure to be like, oh, this is our time, the 3-month thing. Like, you know what I'm saying? Lotto was in front of mass audiences before Sexy Red was.
Yeah.
As Mulatto.
Very much so.
But
I mean, Bust Me Out the Rapper, it's the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's
it still needs
that's a Flint beat, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Darius is a kid that played with me back when I was rapping. So shout out to Darius on that. When he comes back in town, we getting him in here. But the arc of that is like we need to it's back to like what I think of context, but that's where the work that I'm doing in community and some of these challenges are in community. It's pimping in the community. It's drugs in the community. It's forms of like, okay, leveraging sexuality to find sustainability and livelihood in the community. Like these things
Our
do exist.
congressman says we need to decriminalize sex work. Shri Tanadar. He is your Detroit congressman.
He's my actual congressperson.
Right. And he said a few weeks ago in relation to Matt Gaetz, the former Florida congressman that wanted to be the U.S. Attorney General. Matt Gaetz, you have a sex scandal. You can't be the Attorney General. And he sat down. He stood down.
And see,
he's a media personality now.
And this is why, like, it's so interesting we're here now in this discussion. But that's why I like to challenge critical thought, because and I'm definitely not pro Matt Gaetz, but I also am pro critical thinking. I'm pro critical thinking when I say that, like, okay, America's relationship with sex needs to be resolved if we really want to critically look at things like this, just because what's considered a sex scandal, so many iterations, Jeffrey Epstein. And when you look at the dossier of the people we know that were traveling there, when we know that the roots to you have an island in a nation that's really built on the fact of this is an island for pedophilia, and you have multiple sitting presidents, multiple dignitaries from across the world, multiple media personalities, movie stars, people that lead the largest nonprofit agencies in the world, people that lead the largest businesses in the world, like all connected to and connecting and doing business with this man and going to this island that is specifically into human trafficking of young women. And these are Democrats and Republicans, liberals and conservatives. So sometimes it seems like it's cherry picking of pulling anything out, because I still feel we have an unresolved connection to sex scandals. And then, a lot of America's design and premise is based on Rome, Plato's Republic. And when you look at Rome, sex scandals there, the root of even the relationship between a lot of where the foundation of this nation starts. And Benjamin Franklin, our forefather, which in a lot of lenses, sometimes with these exhibits, they paint what happens with Sally Hemings is like, oh, this was a romance and a love. No, that was rape, and it wasn't just him. It was very prevalent, and it wasn't just women. There were enslaved Black men being raped by their enslavers oftentimes. Like these relationships between sex in America and what's happening here, it's just very. It's like an elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about, and then you pull something and it's like sex scandal with this politician and this person. And
you have a sex scandal in every community, man. Trump said he's going. Well, he did. He I think, released or sort of unclassified files related to the assassination of JFK and Martin Luther King. The New Jersey drone. Did you hear the press secretary? She's 27 years old, born in 97 like me, talking about why there was just commercial drones and FAA was doing research in the air. That was the New Jersey drones. It wasn't any aliens. He hasn't released any Epstein files. I don't know what about the Epstein
and
files?
I think that's another person that obviously had a relationship with him as well. And I mean this reality with it. And a lot of this, especially in communities like mine, are back to the agency of poverty. I don't think people choose this without the concept of feeling as though I'm forced to do this and exploit themselves, and the impact that it has on community. As a person that loves organizing a community, I'm seeing it. So it's less, and that's why the context is needed. It's not about what it is, it's about how it is. And even just the gun violence that exists. Like, one of the forums we're going to do this year is, and it's been something I want to uplift, is why would you shoot somebody for them? Because a lot of the quote unquote anti-violence rallies and intervention work doesn't supersede the fact that, like, it's more guns than people in America. So the concept of not having a gun, or what it would be, as the Lion's Tailgate murder. Like, that's a classic example of even, what are the circumstances? How do things play out? Where the ego happens? Like, I often ask a lot of the young fellas that, I know, I'm like, okay, when if two men above the age of 30 have a disagreement, how do you see that problem being resolved without a firearm? Which I'm not necessarily justifying using a firearm just because you're disagreeing with somebody, but this is what our society has. Especially when having a concealed carry firearm permit, and many people I know have them, it's a reason why. So meaning, by having a firearm, you have a reason why I would shoot somebody.
We just saw that video yesterday of was it Sterling Heights or Dearborn? It was Dearborn Heights. Young man and his girlfriend shot, 3 people injured, the intruder to their home shot. I'm not a fear-mongering kind of guy. If somebody wants to shoot me down, they sure as hell will. So I kind of like to err on the side of, everyone's going to treat me without shooting me. But I have had guns pointed at me, and I don't know if other journalists are in the same boat. I think about that, not just by police. I've been arrested.
But that's
but I've been, walking into some of the wrong person's car in Kalamazoo at the, liquor store at night. Like, oh, my bad. Getting,
And that's where like we say, it's like we have a culture of, like, with sex, we also have a very violent culture.
Yeah.
We often, the portrayal in most movies is we're winning through violence.
Yeah.
When we look at war, his story of it is everything is violent. So to pull out one thing and then we wonder, it's like, oh, why did that person get shot? Because that's the other thing in justification. I mean, when I look at most of the rap that I've listened to, I mean, I'm sure over 1 billion people have been shot just listening to the stuff that I'm listening to. So in this, it's justifications of why I'm sliding on somebody. I mean, I think this whole King Von situation is tragic. But I don't know if people look at it like that, especially when now we have a lot of this happening in the social space of people are justifying saying slide on somebody, which for our older listeners, that means murder someone because of unresolved murder to someone else that you know. Where does it end? You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you resolve a lot of this stuff? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? But I do know that more of these discussions need to happen, because communities like mine, it's like it's so many kids that grow up without parents because they've lost lives to gun violence. And that's a whole different relationship when you know somebody that's lost a parent because they were murdered, because murder is different than, and I'm not taking away from like cancer or anything else, but it can weigh heavy.
I mean, it's just traumatic. And it's
situations.
Like anger. Like, imagine the emotions of like, no, that's not right. That's unfair. A lot of these people are still with their, DPD liaison calling them up because they don't call them back, talking about where's my baby? Like, what is my son going to get justice?
And what does that look like?
Right.
And I don't necessarily know if locking a person up becomes justice either, from knowing so many people that I know that have served, as they say, got bodies on them. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I know a couple people that got the natural life. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I don't know, but I do know the impact it has on my community. So in doing the work that I do, these are some of the challenges that we're dealing with. and even the restraints of social work or even psychology or psychiatry, I haven't necessarily seen that resolve a lot of this stuff either. So it's people that have triggers of even being in neighborhoods like mine because of what they know has happened over here and those connections, where it's like, how do we resolve a lot of this stuff? So I look at it's tough. And I think that a lot of the music, though it's a reflection of what's happening and it's truth inside of it, the context, especially in the 9 to 14-year-old realm, it becomes tough. And then here's the classic question that I often ask a lot of black men that are like 18, 19, 20, is I say, what's tougher to get, a job or a gun? And the reality is, it's
$100
it's way easier to get.
It don't cost even $200 to get a gun, man. You can go to Dunham's right now and buy a gun. It does not cost a lot. I'll tell you something. When 2 years ago, I learned that I had 5 siblings. They're half siblings. On my dad's side, his dad shot and killed not my grandmother, but the reason why my dad's side of my family, who I've never had a relationship with. Yeah. The reason why they're so split is because this man, shortly after he shot and killed his wife, leaving behind an entire family, picked up and wanted to get a new family and did it. And I came from his second family, and I might be wrong. I got to look back on the ticket there. But it's interesting, like the idea of, oh wow, like generational too. Like
I've recently had it, and it's very known as he shares it. But Khan Satori.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And the story of Khan. Yep. I mean, the story of it was maybe one of the more tragic instances. Like when I challenge a lot of folks that, as I'm definitely for defunding the money put into police, but I'm not for abolishing the police from communities like mine. And the story I always often uplift, this is maybe one of the most tragic things that I've seen, but it was a domestic violence incident, because this is usually how it escalates. It's people that know people. A domestic violence incident where and kids are in the house. So it's across the street from it was a home that was across the street from where the studio, where it sits right now, like across the street. So man comes home, beats the hell out of the woman he's with. Kids are in the house. Young kids, maybe like 8, 9, 10. She is really messed up. She calls her younger sons. He comes back. Somehow one of the sons gets shot, but the other one gets tackled. They end up stabbing the man to death. Burn him up in the room of the house. Mom ends up dying in this whole thing too. Kids end up surviving. It's like things like this obviously tempers adrenaline. A lot of like how to respond to things are out the way. Like this whole thing, and it's like I don't know how to respond to stuff like this, but I know that I've seen it. I know it. So even the other kids in the neighborhood that are friends with those kids, how do you even explain stuff like that? But this is violence in the community. This is American violence, as I believe that, right now when we look at mass shootings and how common it is, I would imagine, we're probably, you could almost say like 4 a month, you know what I'm saying? Like it's gonna happen. We have a society that's very violent. So, it's just people, going to a concert, going to a shopping center, going to a mall.
They almost killed Trump.
Multiple times. And I know a lot of people say not, but still, and I think it still is a possibility, like we have a violent culture. So to resolve the violent culture we live in, we can either act as though it's not violent, which I often think we romanticize it as if it's not, or we can live in a space where we know it is violent. And if we live in a space as though we know it is violent, we need to start looking at, okay, what causes this violence to be triggered for me and not others? Because that's often like a lot of this stuff. We're looking at other people like they're violent and they need this and they need that. And if they had this and if they had that, and it's like, okay, the 5 guns you got, what would make you grab that?
That's a really interesting concept. Invite me to there. I'll cover it.
I'm
really
love
interested in
that.
these CVI groups, man. They're getting $700,000, $10 million as a whole. The Republican legislature says they're gonna pass a $75 million what they call a public safety trust fund. Republicans are gonna pass it, but Democrats, conservative Democrats, Olivas Farhat of Dearborn and Karen Whitsett of West Side Detroit, led this police funding bill, and Duggan and DPD were really about it. It's going to give 18 million, a third of an 18 million allocation. So 6 million, I think, times 3. I didn't do math in school, but yes, 18 divided by 6 is
that's
3.
it.
Yeah. So about $6 million is going to go to these groups. 10 million did a few, about 12 months back. And the city is saying that because of these community intervention groups, and obviously we know New Era and
Force Detroit.
Yes. Should they get another $500,000?
I personally think this. When it first happened, the Shot Stopper program is what he's talking about, community violence intervention.
Not to be confused with Shot Spotter, the technology.
Yes. So Shot Stopper is the program with people interacting with people. Shot Spotter is the program that looks at like the sound of a firearm and responds to it. And when it first was uplifted, I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. That sounds like vigilante justice. And just knowing Alea Harvey Quinn that just stepped down from leading Force Detroit, and shout out to Alea and her whole family, because I've known her for years.
Shout out to everybody doing this work, yo. This is not like easy or like something that you just, I'm gonna do. Like, nah, like.
And I think that the way that they're looking, especially monitoring a lot of the online social media stuff and understanding a lot of the way that rises, similar to like it's been some effective models. And I do believe that this is the thing why I'm so for defunding the police, because of my understanding from the community lens. I'm seeing a lot of this stuff from 12th Street. 12th Street. That's the lens of how I see a lot of the world, even in schools, of my marketing school with my masters and all of that stuff. It's still from a 12th Street lens. And from a 12th Street lens, police officers have seen my community and me as we are criminals. That's how they're looking at us. And I believe that the criminality that exists in my community and is here and is present because of the lack of resources. I don't think that people are choosing to be criminals. People are in circumstances where they feel that crime is the opportunity that's best for them. So
that's a failure of government.
It's a failure of society.
Yeah.
It's, shout out to Ice Cube.
That's a failure. How do we not have opportunities out here where our best opportunity is go be a scammer? Our best opportunity is go sell yourself on Tinder. Your best opportunity out here is go waste all your money, go be 4-2 Doug and become a gambling addict.
Yeah.
Come on, 4-2 Doug.
I love 4-2.
Me too, but what?
But I feel
Stop gambling. What?
But that's where the opportunities become so scarce, and that's a response to it, where the way that people are looked at that are committing these crimes are looked at as they're quote unquote criminals, where it's like if they had more opportunity. Like the best sociological experiment ever was like during COVID-19 when people got a stimulus check and some extensions on some unemployment. People were like, people don't want to work these jobs and crime is down. And it's like, you think? Because all it took was a little bit of money influxed in communities like mine. And now a lot of corporations can't exploit the scarcity that usually exists. And then that creates the machine that functions in this machine, since I believe if you give more opportunity. So I'm for these programs continuing to flourish, but I would like for them to exist outside of the entity of policing, because the other thing that created from policing, I believe, is, Lord knows, when I say this, a lot of bandwidth. I'm going to interview a police recruit soon, actually, on Detroit is Different. This is going to be so funny. Now, I look at police as it's an adversarial relationship as a black man just naturally, because police officers are paid for having criminals. Police need criminals for them to exist. If you don't have the idea and the threat of crime and violence, then you don't need police. So it's a relationship where one needs the other, especially going to Northwestern High School, which I think was a bad school. A lot of the money in Northwestern was funded through having a gang squad unit inside of Northwestern. We got We got Homeland Security money because of the wild shit going on at Northwestern. Now, were there weapon sweeps and drug sweeps happening? Yes, there were. Were there weapons and drugs inside of Northwestern? Yes, it was. But still, if you put and diverted some of that relationship between things and put different opportunities inside of Northwestern, I believe that that would not exist. Hence, you keep the radio television program going. So some of this is a symptom of the broken society why crime is existing. And that's the argument I have. And police need to exploit the broken society for it to function. So for the funding to come through policing naturally slants this stuff to continue to exist. Because as much as it's cool right now and they're walking alongside it, if enough crime drops, then that detective doesn't need to be there. That squad car doesn't need to get renewed. That extra money for the tank that they have for the SWAT and gang squad unit doesn't need to exist. The money for, here's a lot of where money goes for policing. The money for the paid informants doesn't need to exist. Like, if we can pull that money away and actually put it to instrumental and constructive things into our community, and let people intervene and do work like what I'm doing and what these people want to naturally do, then I think that you eliminate crime in our community.
Or, even better idea, you know what you could do? These are the smartest people in the room. You know what they do? They just give all your money to GM and Ford.
And see, and that, but see, that's where, to me, I believe that that's the same concept. And the reason, and I believe that the symptom of crime will exist in any community if you start taking away the resources and have the impacts. And in a lot of ways, I believe communities like ours are more benevolent because, the conditions, as I'm uplifting from that State of Black Detroit, when you think of the oppressive way that a poverty exists in the city of Detroit, I'm surprised it's not more crime that exists here.
That's interesting. A lot of people will poke holes in Duggan and the city's assessment that crime has gone down. They will point out the fact that in 1966,
more people.
There was, so many more.
So it's like per capita.
Population was so much higher. And that's the, per 100 people, murders per 100 people, I think, is one of the popular stats.
Numbers do lie. I know a lot of people say they don't, but that's the other thing about public safety. It's a mental thing. So it's how people feel. And it's back to, if you have opportunity for people, they're going to feel more safe naturally.
People with police tell me that people in their communities feel safer. I think Todd Bettison said in Lansing, standing behind the Republican House Speaker Matt Hall, that there are people that are shocked at the state of white people existing in Detroit, white people living in neighborhoods in Detroit, white outsider non-Detroiters feeling comfortable walking down certain streets that longtime Detroiters wouldn't even go to.
Yeah, and I think some of that longtime Detroiters, Kari Mason, poet, as he speaks to, that was a detective for a long time, homicide and things, it's the traumas that are associated. Like some of these someone just hearing the name triggers something. Now, I'm going to be honest too. And this is the flip side of stuff where some of my activist folks sometimes push back at what I'm saying. It's not a lot of opportunity here, and it is a lot of street shit going on. It's some black collar opportunities in the city of Detroit. And the tough thing about black collar opportunities is one, it's not like driving Uber. You can't clock out. You can't say I'm done for the day. And it's tough. And when you walk that path, you're not only possibly harming yourself with those risks, you're harming anyone else you associate with. So the mindfulness and, like, as they say, like street smarts, some of this stuff is just, it's to a level where I don't, it's like embedded in you, some of the street smarts just from being over here. How you cross the street, how you approach certain people, how you talk to certain people that you really know well. You know what I'm saying? Like, here's a classic one. Yo, that's my guy. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes you got to peep him. Now, what I'm saying to you, if I say that to you, and you know what I'm saying, is basically the gentleman I just introduced you to is also a gentleman that at times sometimes can involve himself in a lot of criminal activity. Because he can involve himself in a lot of criminal activity and he does not know who you are and doesn't know how to frame that, you could possibly be a person into a criminal act that he's making. You may not necessarily be a direct victim, but you could be an indirect victim of what he's doing. So you need to be mindful of engaging with him, but you still need to be respectful, because if you're not respectful, then now you've put yourself in the definitely being a direct victim of what's happening.
Yeah.
Now, what I just said is, hey, my man, that's my man. But, people, I said something that fast. Yeah. You're not going to pick that up unless you have a context of living where I'm living. Yeah. Whereas there's people I know where it's like, yeah, for sure.
How many reporters working at the Detroit News and Free Press and M Live, and how many you think got that?
I have no idea, but it can be the difference between life or death. So and then this is the other part of also living in a community like mine where violence is so prevalent. So it's been so many people I know, especially some of the white folks I know that moved to Detroit. Yeah. And then it'll be like one of them got robbed and jumped.
Their car broken into.
And the first thing I think is not like, oh my God, what happened? The thought process I think is, what do you do?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh man, I was cool, and it's the people that I started smoking weed with. And it's like, okay, now you like smoking marijuana. You think, okay, it'll be cool to live in a community where I can buy marijuana from the person in the community, which ain't necessarily a bad thing.
No, it's not.
If you buy trees,
small business,
from a person
it's better than
that
dispensary
offers you trees in a community like mine, you need to be mindful of back to that same thing of you need to be thinking, I need to peep this. That doesn't mean say no, but it definitely means you're going to keep a veil that's going to be different, because the minute that you enter into the world of, oh, you're in my world, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get played, but it opens up the opportunity. So now technically, okay, new person that moved into the neighborhood, I see you talking to the guy that owes me $100. That don't necessarily mean you owe me $100. But when I ask, hey, what's going on? And you're going to interact with me as though we're in Ann Arbor. And it's like, oh, I haven't seen him. I can call him. It's like, yeah. I just owe him something. Now you've involved yourself in the being in the mix of an act that you probably don't want to be in the mix of, which doesn't mean to stay away from the city. It doesn't mean to stray away from these individuals. It just means you have to have an understanding that's very layered. Today, in the gas station I always go, which usually has gentlemen that offer that have their entrepreneurial spirits inside and outside of the establishment too. But it's the one I always go to, right? I know the people. So the way that the guy approached me and asked for something for gas money, a little bit younger than me, I had to be mindful, within seconds of okay, am I going to support? Am I not going to support? How do I spin off? How do I not spin off? A lot of this stuff is even learned from taking the bus. I strongly urge anybody that moved to the city of Detroit, take the city bus a couple of times to places that you can take the bus, because you're going to learn more of Detroit culture by taking the bus than anything else. That's going to be the real Detroit experience. Even sitting at a Detroit bus stop is going to teach you a whole lot. And really, if you start taking the bus and you move into a neighborhood, you're going to meet a lot of the people around there.
You're going to meet your neighbors.
And it's stuff like this that you only know from
you go to
being in the hood.
Stop. You go to the bus stop, you go to the church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are the things. And you walk to the store a couple of times. You don't meet the people. You just walk and you pick up some stuff. It's certain hood clues you pick up on, which I've never lived in the suburbs. I'm sure if I was in a cul-de-sac, I'd be doing everything wrong. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So people would be like, oh, out here, man, you gotta I've been in the hood most of my life. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, if I moved to a cul-de-sac, I'd mess everything. I'd probably get kicked out and neighborhood association. You know what I'm saying? It'll
be all right. They're friendly. Leave your car door unlocked. My parents do that.
I probably get a dog and they kick me out because the dog I got is not the same,
the HOA,
neutered or something.
The HOA people,
you know what I'm saying? Yeah,
yeah, man, it's interesting. I really respect and admire everyone that I have built relationships with in Detroit so far. I've been here since the pandemic started, y'all. So I feel like I've been shaped by this
Yeah.
town and by its residents.
Yeah, and I mean, you move in spaces and places. So, and then that's the other thing, your individuality and spirit. And I do believe that you have safety just by being genuinely you. If you show the fear, it'll be known. If you
Yeah.
if you put your nose up at what it is, it'll be different too. But if you ingratiate yourself and you connect in the culture and it's cool, you'd be surprised. And actually, some of the people with the least will be the most giving always.
Mm-hmm.
Always. You'll be shocked and surprised, but still take that, because that little bit that they have that they want to share, that's something that's a connection and a bond that they're honored to share with you.
Mm.
You know, and I'm sure you've given, as you talked, and we can close out here before I go to my classic questions. You said people want a voice, and you give people an opportunity to have that voice.
I try, man. I gotta keep doing it. That's what the whole goal and intention of Detroit 1 Million is really talk about why we, as young people under 40, are in the situation that we are in. We are in a gerontocracy where our leaders are making bad decisions upon bad decision, and there's no one's held accountable. We have better ideas. Like, I'm telling y'all, I talk to our leaders. I talk to everyone. We're just as smart. We're smarter. And it's about time we take control of our own destinies, right? And that's what I'm trying to do with Detroit 1 Million. I know that local news will be a thing forever. I don't need a corporation to tell me, oh, well, the market's not really good right now, so you're worth this much. No. You know, there's always going to be an appetite for information, civic engagement. And I want to do it in a cool way, man. I want to do it in a way that's going to get people that don't even care about this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get them to care. Because, you know what I'm saying? I grew up, Fox 66 was the Midland, local Fox station. And afterward, what comes on at night at 11 p.m. is dun 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 dun, Entertainment Tonight. I'm saying I get the entertainment value of being in community, talking about the politics and the movements and happenings of your town. Like, I love that. I love, like, the idea of brands, right? Like, what's the strongest news brand for Gen Z and millennials, for real? TMZ, yeah, and not that I want to be like those brands. I want to do, sort of more deeper work and journalism. But as we've grown up, again, I was born in '97, so you got to make people care, and we don't care anymore. We're not watching CNN and MSNBC or Fox. We have completely abandoned that. And where is going to be the people for us? Like, where's going to be the people for the people in the real world, at the bottom, in the trenches, at the liquor store, behind the counter, at the Meijer as an employee, at Kroger as the store manager? Where are we? They're literally taking us out of society. Like, I'm telling y'all, there are not working class poor people in these rooms that I'm in. They aren't there. It's all nepotistic, wealthy family, well-to-do, came from here and there. And I'm not saying that you're an evil person. I'm from Midland. I grew up with all of those people.
But you culturally can't understand some of the stuff I just was talking about for 15 minutes. You're just not going to understand the nuance and why it matters.
I'm going to try to help. I'm going to try to translate it for him, but I can only go as best I can. Because, again, I'm talking to a specific group. If more than that group wants to come along with me, hey, guys, let's come along for the ride, man. I'm telling you guys right now, Detroit 1 Million, we want to make this into something that is a thing.
Well, with that being said, my brother, I'm sure this is not going to be the last time in this studio.
No, it's not.
We're going to definitely do some more creativity.
We got to talk, man. There's so much to talk about in Detroit. We got a mayor's race coming up. We got, our governor is going to get replaced by, could it be an independent? Duggan leaves the Democratic Party. Man, Trump had so much success in Michigan and in Detroit. I was the only one that ever said, hey, man, I think he might do well here, and he gained 8,000 votes. The Free Press people looked at me like I was crazy for putting it on the little election night bet board. I said Trump was going to get 20,000 votes, and he did.
Yeah.
And so, you got to talk to people, man. I appreciate you, Kari, for having me on here. If you guys want to contact me, I am at Samuel J. Robb on Twitter, Sam Drinks Water on Instagram. And I'm really just out here and about here in the real world. Like, if you go out on Friday and Saturday night, you're probably going to see me, at Paramita, at Kiesling, at wherever.
Yeah. So with that being said, classic Detroit is different questions. Now, Very first car, year, make, and model, year you got it.
Pontiac G606, hard top convertible. It was a flex. It was hard, man. I would go into those gas stations. They'd be like, "Oh, you got the last one, huh? You got the last one." I'm like, "Yeah, I do."
Where's the first place you went when you got it?
I don't even know. Kalamazoo. I don't know.
Okay. Man, I know that was.
It was a hard top convertible, so I was
What
like,
color?
It was black, bro. It was black.
Okay.
It was the jet black. Like, you still see it on the road. It was the 06 Pontiac G6 hardtop convertible GT. Ooh, it was a flex. Ooh.
Oh, man.
I got a worse car now, even.
Hey, it is what it is. All right, you're the DJ at the end of the fireworks, Woodward and Jefferson. You get to play 2 songs. What you playing?
I'm playing that. I ain't got no panties on. Ain't got no panties on. Okay. I ain't got no panties on the dance floor.
Hilarious.
And then I'm gonna play
that's to the
Wax a Million. Wax a Million. Shout out to the Ghetto Tech.
That's Ghetto Tech, and that's also BET Uncut.
Okay, yeah. There you go. The other song I would play would be Scorpion Eyes, Bang Gang Lonnie, because I just said that. I probably wouldn't ever play that, but just because I was talking about Lonnie bands, shout out to Lonnie. He was my favorite rapper for like a good 2 years. I think he's living in California now, so he's got his own life. But continue to be great, Lonnie bands. I really appreciate you for talking about real issues in your music.
All right, last question. The new Detroiter question, or the move to Detroit, first generation. Alien comes down. Take me to the most Detroit place and experience you can take them. Where you taking ET?
I'm going to the Ravens Club. I don't even, what is that called? Ravens something. You know what I'm talking about? It's
on the east side, the Blues Club?
Yeah, the Blues Club. I'm taking them there. This man tried to get me to he's like, go home, get your saxophone. Go get it right now. Go get it. Go get it. They were having us on the me and Bryce and Malachi were like singing. It was actually funny, bro. We were the only people that were like not a part of it in there.
Yeah, and also probably the only people that were born
not in
1970.
Yeah, it was all old heads in there, man. But it was so funny. We met the owner of the place that just happened to be there that night.
And you come in there with gym shoes.
Yes.
He's not feeling it.
No. Not
at all.
No. He was making fun of what we had on. Yes, he was
sure.
making fun of our clothes. Yes, They took pictures of us even, and we're like, ha, 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 I'm gonna post this on Facebook. Ha, ha, ha. What's another Detroit place that I would go to? Cass Corridor people. Shout out to Temple Bar. I never watched the Detroiters with Sam Richardson and I never watched that show. I just actually went to Temple Bar, like as a resident of Cass Corridor, because I lived 5 minutes away.
It's remodeled and reopened now.
It's new. I haven't actually been in there since it reopened, but when it went down, like I have just like really great memories of like old, ex-girlfriends and just long late nights in Detroit. You control the jukebox there. I might do the Donnell Jones song. Girl, you know what's up. You love it. I learned how to do with the hustle to that song, not the Tamia one.
Interesting.
Spin, but that one at Temple Bar through a long time Detroit person.
That sounds like another relationship between drugs and full circle
Sam
recall.
Drinks water, man.
Full circle recall. Yes. All right. Yes, that's definitely a place where well liquor is served often.
It is. Shout out to Larry. I would see him up and down Cass Corridor. Be like, when's the Temple Bar coming back? Larry? He'd be like, soon. It came back. I was kind of getting nervous at first that it would never come back, but it came back, and I'm gonna be there soon. Everyone should go in there. Yeah. Shout out to Temple Bar. I wish I could go back into my old apartment, man.
ET would have an interesting night with you, my friend.
Oh, man, he would love me, man. We would take him right back. I would take him to Elon.
Hilarious. I don't know if he in the D yet.
No, man. He doesn't need to be here, man.
Yep. So with that being said, peace.
Thank you, guys.
Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.